Thanks, Yuki. So my name is Nicola Grander. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm an associate director in the Financial Aid and Scholarships Office. So as Yuki mentioned, I'm going to be running through some information about financial aid, some resources that you can access. I'm here with two colleagues of mine. That would be Joey Atwood. Joey, I don't know if you want to raise your hand, and Anthony Green. They're here also. So if you have questions in the chat, as we're going through this presentation, please feel free to put them in there. As Yuki said, 9 times out of 10, another person has a similar question or could spark another question or a follow-up question. So just put them in the chat, and our folks here are going to be able to answer them as we're going through the presentation. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and start. So I'd like to get us kicked off here with our land acknowledgement here from the Graduate Division.
UC Berkeley sits on a territory of
the Huichin, the ancestral and unceded land
of the Chochenyo-speaking Ohlone people,
the successors of the sovereign Verona Band of Alameda County. This land was and continues to be of great importance to the Muwekma Ohlone tribe and other familial descendants of the Verona Band. We recognize that every member of the Berkeley community has and continues to benefit from the use and occupation of this land since the institution's founding in 1868.
Support local businesses owned by Native peoples.
Make a donation to the Shumi land tax, which directly supports Segorati's work of rematriation. We are still here.
We are still here.
We
are still here.
We are still here.
Okay, so here's our agenda for today. So I'm going to start off with just some basic general financial aid information about how eligibility for aid is determined, and because that really sets up the building blocks on how some of those components can change through the appeals process, which could lead to additional financial aid. I'm going to talk about loans and work study. I'm going to go over how financial aid works, so how payments are applied to your account. And then just some resources or how to contact us. Okay, so the first thing is that students have to apply for financial aid every year. So students apply for financial aid using the free application for federal student aid or the California Dream application. Applications start opening October 1st. So I'm really using this slide to plug the 23-24 financial aid applications. They opened on October 1st. The priority deadline in California for the 23-24 year is March 2nd. And I know March 2nd seems like a long time away, but we all know that time passes so quickly anymore. So this is just a plug to apply for financial aid. If you're going to be continuing on to the next academic year, please take a moment and apply for financial aid for the upcoming year. Okay, so now I'm going to talk about how eligibility for financial aid is determined. So financial need or eligibility is really a result of a simple calculation. And so what it is we take the cost of attendance or the estimated cost of attendance minus the expected family contribution. And that expected family contribution comes from the aid application that you file. And the difference is what we consider your financial need or eligibility for need-based financial aid. So your financial need can be met a number of ways. So it could come in the form of grants and scholarships, but it also may include loans and work study. And it's likely that a good number of you, if not most of you, had a combination of loans, work study, and grants and scholarships in your current financial aid package. So now that you know the simple formula, what I'm going to do is I'm going to break down each one of the components of the formula. So what is the cost of attendance? So the cost of attendance is really the basis for how much we award students. The financial aid package, regardless of the source of aid, so whether it be federal aid, state aid, institutional aid, or scholarships, cannot exceed the total estimated cost of attendance. We do know that tuition and fees aren't the only expense that students have when coming to school. So when we think about the cost of attendance, or when you create financial aid packages, we look at all expenses. Now, the cost of attendance is just an estimate because we know that every student is unique. And in the next slide, I'll talk about how there's different costs of attendance based on your living situation. So the cost of attendance, it has two types. It has direct costs and indirect costs. Direct costs are things that the university charges you directly. So that would be things like your tuition and fees, or your room and board if you're living on campus. Then there's indirect costs, and those are expenses that we know that you have, but the university won't charge you for those directly. So when we think about indirect costs, I want to think about like books and supplies, transportation, personal expenses, so like laundry, shampoo, toothpaste, that kind of thing. So we take indirect costs and combine it with the direct costs, and that becomes the total estimated cost of attendance. And so, like I said, cost of attendance will vary based on living situation, and I have an example of those different types of cost of attendance in the next couple slides. So what's included in the cost of attendance? I touched on this briefly. So we have the direct costs, which would be tuition and fees, and room and board if you're living on campus. If you're living off campus, your room and board will be considered an indirect cost because the university isn't charging you for those items directly, but we will still include it in the cost of attendance because we know it's an expense. So if you're currently living on campus right now and you're thinking that you're going to be moving off campus next year, we still will provide financial aid to assist with your housing and food. Then there's books and supplies, transportation, personal expenses. If you've accepted loans, we include loan fees, and then health insurance is also part of your cost of attendance, whether or not you use it or you waive out. So some things that aren't included in the cost of attendance. Now, these may be costs that you have, and these may be very real costs to you, but we just can't include them in the cost of attendance and provide funding for them. So that would be things like car payments and consumer debt, expenses for a spouse or a partner, or expenses incurred outside of the academic year. So we have the estimated cost of attendance is really intended for a 9-month period of enrollment. So that would be for fall and spring. There is a separate cost of attendance, which is for summer, and that's specific to summer. But what I'm going to be talking about today is really that 9-month period of the cost of attendance during the standard academic year. And then there's different budget types. So there's different expenses for students who are living in the residence halls, and students living in on-campus apartments, off-campus apartments, or living with relatives. And this next slide really shows you how their expenses differ based on your living situation. So as you can see, the cost of attendance for on-campus residence hall, room and board is included in the direct costs because the university bills you for those directly. Let's see, and then for an off-campus apartment, the housing and utilities is included in indirect costs. So this is just an example of how there's different costs of attendance based on your living situation, because your expenses for each one of those components will be different due to your living expense. Okay, so the formula is estimated cost of attendance minus the expected family contribution. So I'm going to move on to the second piece of that formula, which is the expected family contribution. So the expected family contribution is determined based on the information that's provided on the financial aid application. And it's considered a measure of a family's financial strength and calculated according to a formula established by law. So, and that's built into either the FAFSA or the California Dream Up application. It's what those agencies think that a student and family may expect it to contribute towards the education for a year. And it considers the student and the family's application information. So if you're a student where parental information is required on the aid application, it would be considered, the expected family contribution would take into consideration your information and your family or your parents' information. And we use the expected family contribution, again, it's part of the formula, so it determines the types and amounts of awards. I will say what the expected family contribution is not. It's not the amount that anyone is going to have to pay the university for directly, but rather it's just an amount that that you would be, or your family would be, could contribute towards your education. And so how that could come to play, again, because there's direct and indirect costs, it could come at, taking you shopping or doing laundry, or when you go home, or if they were to come, and if you're a dependent student, your parents come to take you and drive you back home, that's all wrapped into the expected family contribution. So it could be monetary and could be in kind. Okay, so now I've talked a little bit about how eligibility for financial aid is determined. And we kind of dug deeper into the components of that formula. Now I'm going to talk about how you can appeal some of those items that go into the formula, like the expected family contribution and the cost of attendance. So as measured on, or as discussed on the previous slide, the expected family contribution is considered a measure of the family's financial strength. However, the aid application for the 22-23 year is based on income from 2020. So we do know that it may not be reflective of your family's current employment situation or financial situation now. Because it's really looking, when you fill out the aid application, it's looking at income information from 2 years prior. So if there's been a change in your family's financial situation, yours or your family's financial situation, that's resulted in like a reduction of income as a result of a job loss, if there's been a job change because of divorce or separation, if there's been a change or reduction of or child support, or if there are high medical expenses. So if your family has to pay high out-of-pocket medical expenses, we can take those into consideration. And you can tell us about those expenses or the change to your family situation by submitting an expected family contribution appeal. And so if approved, we can reevaluate eligibility for aid and create an award package that's more reflective of your family's current ability to contribute based on what their situation is now. And the changes are retroactive, meaning that if you submit an expected family contribution appeal now, or let's say over the break, and we don't get to it until the beginning of the spring semester, your eligibility could change. It would be retroactive to the fall semester. So financial or expected family contribution appeals, you can complete one through the Berkeley Financial Aid Forms website, and that website is berkeley.studentforums.com. So there are some things that we are not able to consider when we look at expected family contribution. So that would be like change in asset value from what was reported on the aid application. Unfortunately, we're not able to take into consideration consumer debt, which would be like credit cards, car payments, personal loans, lottery or gambling winnings that were one-time only. If parents who don't wish to provide information on the aid application, or marital separation where the parents are still living together. We're also, if your family or if you have a zero expected family contribution, really, we wouldn't be able to get that your expected family contribution any lower than zero. So an appeal based on a reduction in income wouldn't be something that we would be able to consider. The deadline to submit an expected family contribution is February 3rd of next year. So just consider, like, if you think that there's been a change in your family's financial situation from 2020, tax year 2020 to now, please do consider completing expected family contribution appeal so we can reevaluate eligibility for aid and provide an aid package that, again, is more reflective of your family's current situation and where they are right now. Okay, so now I'm going to talk about cost of attendance adjustment requests. So as mentioned earlier, the cost of attendance is just an estimate of how much we think it's going to cost to attend Berkeley for the 9-month academic year. So if your estimated cost of attendance isn't reflective of your actual expenses, you can submit a cost of attendance adjustment request. And a cost of attendance adjustment form is really a way for us to collect information about your actual expenses, where then perhaps we would be able to increase that cost of attendance. So if we think about the formula, cost of attendance minus expected family contribution equals need, if your costs are higher than what's in the standard cost of attendance, and we're able to increase that standard cost of attendance, then that's going to equal more eligibility for financial aid. Most requests are funded with additional loans or work study, but those additional costs could also be funded with scholarships or departmental awards. It's just, again, it's a way to be considered for funding if your estimated cost of attendance does not reflect your actual expenses. Students can apply for the cost of attendance adjustment request through the Berkeley Financial Aid Forms website. Again, so it's the same website that you would apply for an expected family contribution appeal. So typical things that we can consider when we look at a cost of attendance request would be increased expenses for housing and utilities, cost of purchasing a computer. That's something that's done once every 3 years. So we're able to increase your cost of attendance for a computer once every 3 years. If you have any medical expenses or childcare expenses, if there's higher costs for transportation or to and from home or to and from school, or any medical expenses, we can consider those costs as well. I did say we can increase your cost for purchasing a computer. While typically summer expenses, so expenses outside of the academic year, aren't something we can consider in the cost of attendance adjustment, the computer is an exception. So if you purchased a computer the summer prior to this academic year, you can submit information to us, or you can request to financial aid to increase your cost of attendance and to have funding to reimburse you for those expenses that you outlaid prior to coming to Berkeley. Just a little bit more information about the increased cost for housing and utilities. For students who are living off campus, the standard budget includes, or your standard cost of attendance includes rent expenses of about $1,200 per month, a little over $1,200 for rent. So if you're living off campus and your rent is higher than that, then I would encourage you to submit a cost of attendance adjustment request so we can consider your additional rent costs. For an off-campus, so for living in a dorm, your expenses are about $19,520 in your cost of attendance. So if your dorm room is higher than that or costs higher than that, so you should submit a cost of attendance adjustment so we can provide you funding that's more accurate to your actual circumstance. And then if you're living in an on-campus apartment, the standard cost of attendance included is $15,528. So again, for housing alone, if your expenses, if your actual expenses exceeds what we include in the cost of attendance, I do encourage you to submit a cost of attendance adjustment request just so we can ensure that the funding matches your actual expenses. So again, we know that these are expenses that you may have, but we're just not able to consider. So education expenses for a spouse or dependent, again, you may have those expenses. They may be very real. We're just not able to provide financial aid for those expenses. Computer or technology expenses for a spouse or a dependent. credit card or car payments. So again, consumer debt, furniture, or living expenses for a spouse or a partner. So again, we know that those are expenses that you have. We're just not able to include those in the cost of attendance and then provide funding for them. So like I said, you can submit a request for an expected family contribution appeal or a cost of attendance adjustment request using the Berkeley Financial Aid Forms website. The login is berkeley.studentforms.com. So once you log in and you're registered and you're good to go, up to the right, you'll see a blue button that says Manage Requests. And when you get there, it should bring you up to a view where you can request your family contribution appeal or cost of attendance. You have to do this one at a time. So if you think a family contribution appeal would be right for you and the cost of attendance adjustment request, you would have to do, you fill out one application at a time. You can start them both. So you can put in the plus and request one and then start both of them, and you can work on them at the same time, but you just have to work on them individually. Okay, just some things about the appeals. Just make sure that you make note of due dates and deadlines. So the expected family contribution appeal, the deadline for that is February 3rd, 2023. And you have until April 7th for any cost of attendance adjustment requests. So again, because expenses come as you move forward and progress through the academic year, so you can request a cost of attendance adjustment request anytime up until April 7th. We do request documentation because we have to just have documentation on file to verify that you have those expenses. So just make sure the documentation that's required. And for the appeals, we would need just documentation for the appeals. It's on the appeal form itself. So just make note of the documentation that's required. Because those incomplete appeals can cause delays, that's that back and forth. But I will say that we are here to assist you. So if you have any questions about what kind of documentation is required or how to fill out the form, please reach out to us. We are here to assist you throughout this process. We want to make sure that it's as easy as possible for you to be able to submit these appeals so we can go ahead and get started on reviewing them. Okay, so talked about how to appeal for more aid if the cost of attendance isn't reflective of your current situation or if there's been a change in your family's financial circumstance. Now I'm going to talk a little bit about work study and loans and how they can assist you in paying your expenses, including any past due fall balances. Okay, so work study and job opportunities. So work study is a great opportunity for students to earn income to cover some of those indirect expenses that are part of the cost of attendance. And the reason why I say indirect expenses is because typically with a job, work study or other job opportunities that aren't work study, you earn a paycheck and you get that money directly. Students, so you can earn income to help manage some of the borrowing. So let's say you have a job and you're working at that job to help keep some of your loan indebtedness down. It's also a great way to gain experience, to build community on campus, to really plug into some of those offices on campus and to meet people and just to be connected. It also helps with time management. When you have certain slots that are taken up with your employment, then you know that you have to budget your time for your studies. I will say that for work study, we know that you are a student first and an employee second. So your work study employer will work around you with your schedule and everything like that, because the most important thing is that you're a student first, and then the work comes secondary. So work study or any job, they won't apply to any charges in Cal Central, but if you have a work study job or if you have work opportunities and you get paid, then you can turn around and help pay some of those charges on Cal Central. So if you haven't been able to utilize your work study, or and you have eligibility for loans, you could convert some of your work study into loans. So let's say your schedule is just so busy that there's absolutely no way that you would be able to utilize your work study this year, but you need some additional funding. Through Cal Central, there is an option when you go into the My Finances page and view your awards. If you have work study and you're eligible for additional loans, you could be able to convert some of that work study into additional loans. Okay, so now I want to spend some time talking about loans, and it's likely that your financial aid package included one or more of these loans. So the first type of loan I'm going to talk about is subsidized loans. For subsidized loans, interest is paid by either the Department of Education, the state, or the institution while you're enrolled in school at least half time. And at Berkeley, we offer 3 types of subsidized loans. So the first one is the Federal Direct Stafford Loan. This is a federal loan that's available to students who fill out the free application for federal student aid or the FAFSA. This loan has an interest rate during repayment of 4.99%. And again, it's interest-free while in school, and when the loan goes into repayment, that is when the interest begins accruing. So the second loan I want to talk about is the California Dream Loan, and this is a loan offered to students who are eligible for aid under the California Dream App application. And the interest rate mirrors the federal loan interest rate, so it's at 4.99%. And again, this is subsidized loan, so no interest while in school. When the loan goes into repayment, that's when interest begins accruing. And then lastly is the Berkeley loan, and this is a loan that has an interest that's fixed at 5%. It's offered to first and second year students who have remaining financial need. This is an institutional loan. Again, interest-free, no interest while in school. So typically, for most of these loans, repayment begins 6 months after you graduate or separate from the institution, or when you stop being enrolled half-time or more. If you are an undergraduate student and then your plan is to go on to get a master's or work on a PhD, as long as you're enrolled at least half-time or more, these loans will continue to be interest-free while you're in school. These subsidized loans are currently only available to undergraduate students. Graduate students don't have the same type of subsidized loan options. So again, these are just a good, affordable way to assist in helping pay for some of those expenses in the cost of attendance. These loans, again, they go into repayment 6 months after you graduate or separate from the institution, and you typically have 10 years to repay the loan, although that depends on your repayment plan and how much you borrow. Okay. So the next type of loan I'm going to talk about are unsubsidized loans, where subsidized loans are available to students and are interest-free while in school. Unsubsidized loans do accrue interest at the date of the first disbursement, so they don't have that interest rate subsidy. The repayment on those loans are the same. So they go into repayment 6 months after you graduate or separate, or when you stop being enrolled at least half-time or more. But that interest rate or that interest on the unsubsidized loan is still accruing. So although the loan doesn't go into repayment, it is accruing interest. Interesting, these loans, these unsubsidized loans, they can be used to help replace some of the expected family contribution. So if you have a family contribution or expected family contribution, it is likely that you'll see some of these loans in your financial aid package. So there's 2 types of unsubsidized loans that we offer. So there's the Federal Direct Unsubsidized Loan that has a 4.99% interest rate, and that's offered to students. And then parents, there is an unsubsidized loan option for them as well. It's called the PLUS loan, or the parent loan for undergraduate students. And it is a credit-based loan for parents. Again, because it's unsubsidized, it accrues interest at the time the loan is paid. It has a little higher interest rate, again, because it's in a parent's name. and it's a credit-based loan. And that interest rate is at 7.54%. So a rule of thumbs with the unsubsidized loan, or with loans in general, but specifically with the unsubsidized loan, borrow only what you absolutely need. But know that the subsidized and unsubsidized loans are an option to help you with your, to help pay for your expenses while at Berkeley. Okay, so now I want to talk a little bit about student loans versus credit cards, because I've spoken with students who come in needing assistance to help pay for certain things in their cost of attendance, and they've used credit cards, but they haven't accepted their student loans. And again, these are just all options to help students pay for education expenses, but I just want to highlight some of the differences between student loans and credit cards. So students with student loans, interest rates on the students' loans are typically lower than interest rates on credit cards, particularly when you're looking at the lifetime of the debt. Student loans oftentimes have a variety of payment options that can assist with managing monthly payments once those loans go into repayment. Additionally, if you are paying on your student loans after graduation and you run into some economic hardship, you can restructure your monthly payments with your servicer. You can even put your loans into forbearance, saying like, you know what, I'm just not able to manage these payments at this time. I'm going to put my loans in forbearance. So the terms and conditions tend to be a little more or kinder and a little gentler than credit cards. Credit cards are what's considered revolving debt, meaning that the credit is renewed as the debt is paid off. So that what that means is you may be making payments on your credit card, getting that balance down, but then as you get the balance down, you're opening up opportunity to charge more on that credit card. So it's a revolving debt. And then unlike your student loan, your monthly payment is going to be on the credit card, is going to be dependent on how much debt you have at the time. And so again, it's revolving. So it could change based on if you add more debt or as you're paying it off. Again, in all these things, you should only borrow what you absolutely need. But really considering loans loans are an option, especially these student loans are an option if you're finding yourself in distress and not able to meet some of those expenses. And so I have an example here of just what a difference between, let's say, a subsidized student loan and a credit card. And this is just an example that I put in some figures in the calculator.net. There's lots of calculators out there for you to kind of estimate how much your loan repayment would be. So if you were to take out a subsidized student loan of $3,500, and then there's a credit card debt of $3,500. The interest rate on your subsidized student loan, I just rounded it up, even though I know it's 4.99%. Let's say your interest rate on your subsidized loan is 5%, and the interest rate on your credit card is 18%. So assuming the same repayment period of 6 years and 11 months. So in 6 years and 11 months, paying $50 a month, you would have that subsidized student loan paid off. You would have made a total of $4,147 in payments, and of that, the interest would be $646. As opposed to the credit card, if you were to assume the same repayment period of 6 years and 10 months, and then that also assumes that you're not adding more debt to that credit card, because again, credit cards are revolving debt, or it's a revolving line of credit. So as you pay towards that debt, that actually opens up an opportunity to borrow more and to get into more debt. So assuming that you have that credit card, you're not charging or not putting any more charges on that card, your monthly payment to get it paid off in 6 years and 10 months would be around $74. And your total payments would be around $6,100. And as you can see, just the difference in how much of that would be in interest. So credit cards are just a more expensive way to finance some of your expenses versus student loans. And again, I just wanted to highlight the different options available to you, and to provide you with this information. So as you move forward, you just can make more and just informed decisions. Okay, so Bears for Financial Success. So we do have a peer-to-peer wellness program that's housed in the financial aid office. And they offer workshops on and one-on-one appointments to assist students in managing personal finances in college and beyond. So you can make an appointment with them by going to this website, and I'll add this here. I'm going to put this in the chat. Here we go. Going to their website, and they have a student-run blog, and they're also on Facebook. So this is a really good, especially if you're living on campus this year and you're thinking about moving off campus. Bears for Financial Success, again, is a really good program. You can kind of walk through what your finances might look like for the upcoming year. But it's a peer-to-peer financial wellness program, so students talking to students about finances. Okay, and lastly, I want to talk about the Basic Needs Office or the Basic Needs Center. So the Basic Needs Center is really another great place where students can get assistance and request support. So they have CalFresh application assistance. So if you're looking to see if you qualify for additional cash aid for food, you can go to the Basic Needs Center and they can assist with CalFresh applications. They run the campus food pantry, and they offer a basic needs emergency financial support. And so what is the Basic Needs Emergency Fund or emergency support? So it's really just a resource for all UC Berkeley students to apply for emergency financial support. So this fund is a collaboration really between the UC Berkeley Basic Needs Center, the Financial Aid and Scholarships Office, the Graduate Division, the ASUC Student Advocates Office. We have 2 financial aid counselors that work who are dedicated solely to working with the Basic Needs Center, and they offer one-on-one advising to students. But really, it's just another opportunity for students to get not emergency cash support, but then also more holistic support, community resources, accessing the food pantry, and different types of assistance, like with the CalFresh application. Okay, so I'm going to shift gears a little bit here. So we've gone over how eligibility is determined, how you can appeal some of those things that are in the formula. And we've talked about work study and student loans and how those are options to assist you in paying for your expenses that are part of the cost of attendance, and that could include any past due balances that you have. Now I want to talk a little bit about how aid works and how it's applied to your student account as you go throughout the year. Okay, so with disbursement and refund, so before the start of the semester, you're charged tuition and fees, and if you live on campus, you're charged room and board, and then your financial aid disperses into your student account and pays off all the fees owed to the university. And if there's more financial aid than there's charges, you get a refund, and you can use that refund to assist with those indirect expenses. So that would be books and supplies, transportation. If you live off campus, that you can get a refund to assist you with your monthly housing expenses. So as we progress throughout the academic year, how the financial aid is dispersed, it changes a little bit just based on the types of charges that you have on your account. So the main thing is that the financial aid applies to the oldest charge in the current or prior term of the same academic year first. And so I'm going to go through this, just read this through. I do have a graphic that will help visualize what I'm talking about. So fall financial aid charges, or fall financial aid can apply towards fall charges. So fall financial aid can apply towards fall charges. So fall 22 aid applies to fall 22 charges. Your spring 23 financial aid can apply towards fall 22 charges and spring 23 charges. So your spring financial aid disperses, and if there's charges on your account from the fall semester, your spring financial aid is going to apply towards the oldest charge first, and that would be in that academic year. So that would be fall, and then it would apply towards your spring charges. And then summer financial aid. So if you're attend summer and you receive financial aid, that summer financial aid, when it disperses, it's going to apply towards the oldest charge in the academic year. So if you have a charge all the way back to fall, that summer financial aid will apply towards those fall charges or apply towards those spring charges before applying the summer charges. Again, so financial aid will apply to the oldest charge on the account in that academic year before applying towards your current charge. And why this is important is because if you have a balance in a prior term and your financial aid for the upcoming term disperses and it pays those charges in the prior term, it means that you could reduce your refund, or it could reduce the amount of aid that's going to be applied to your current term. I promise the graphic will definitely help. So financial aid from the current term can't pay future charges. So financial aid does not pay forward, it just pays backwards in the same academic year. And financial aid can't pay future academic year, and it can't pay prior academic year. So it's really limited to the academic year, and it will pay backwards. So here's this little graphic. So here's the semester. So fall 22, your financial aid will pay your fall charges first. And then when you get to the spring 23, so this upcoming spring term, what's going to happen is the spring 23 is going to pay the oldest fall charge before it pays the spring charge. And then here comes summer. Summer is going to pay the oldest fall or spring charge and then apply to the summer charge. So again, just something just to keep in mind, that if you have a balance on your account and your spring financial aid disperses, what's going to happen is your spring financial aid is going to pay that fall balance before it applies towards your spring charges, which could reduce the amount of refund that you receive, which could reduce the amount of money that you have for your other like living expenses or for your room and board, that kind of thing. So, right, there's just thinking about different options to assist in receiving additional aid, again, through those appeals or through the cost of attendance adjustment. Or if you are thinking that maybe, you haven't accepted your loans or you haven't utilized your work study, we can convert those. So all just different options to assist you in meeting your current expenses. Okay, so there's a lot of information that we talked about or that we went through. Please do contact us. Cal Student Central is our frontline service center for all things registration, financial aid, and billing. And so this is one way in which you can get in touch with us. So there's a virtual front desk. You can give us a call. You can open a case where currently our cases are really low. So you can open a case, and the likelihood of us responding to you quickly is very high. As traffic, there's certain times of the year when we're busier than others, and right now we'll be able to return or respond to you with those cases within a really short amount of time. We also partner with CE3 to provide satellite advising through callback queues on Wednesdays. We have financial aid counselors who have advising in the Basic Needs Center. So different ways to get in contact with us. If you have questions about your appeals or your financial aid, any part of your financial aid, please do get in contact with us.
And EOP, we also want to make sure that you all know how to connect with us. So like Nicole said, this is a lot of information. You might have more questions after this. That's totally fine. And you might have a really unique situation that requires talking to a counselor. So Monday through Friday, EOP offers same-day appointments. This is on our website, which we'll drop in the chat as well. And these are both virtual and in person. So they are posted at 9 a.m. on that link. It's best to check earlier in the morning because they can get full. Today we are booked out for this Tuesday, but for example, you could check that link tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. and there'll be new appointments that you can sign up for. So this is if you want to meet with the EOP counselor. And on the next slide, we also have a really, really great team of peer academic counselors. And these peer academic counselors are students just like yourself who can answer so many of these different questions and walk you through the processes. And they offer their appointments in MLK-B North, which is the bottom floor of the ASUC Student Union near the food pantry and the Basic Needs Center. So please don't hesitate to reach out, you all. I think the most important thing we want to underline from this is if you see something that is confusing on your Cal Central, whether that's a hold or a past due charge, and you're like, where does this come from? I thought I got financial aid. The most important thing is to connect with us for support so we can figure it out. We don't want to see you rolling into the spring with a past due balance that could potentially lapse into a hold and prevent future enrollment for future terms. And once this current academic year ends in May, oftentimes there's limitations on what type of awards you might still have access to. So if you have a balance on your Cal Central, please come talk to us so we can help you resolve it so that you can go into winter break with less stress and you can just enjoy your month off, not having to think about, you know, money and bills and things like that. I will also underline, and I'll put in the chat, the UC Berkeley scholarships database. I know a lot of students can be loan averse, especially EOP students, for different reasons, and we understand that. And if you are hesitant about taking out loans and adamant about that, make sure that you're filling your gap somehow and apply for scholarships during this winter break. Take out like a couple hours of the week to look for scholarships, apply. That can help reduce your loan and debt ratio as well. So we'll put that in the link too.
I will say that now is the time to apply for scholarships, to start looking for scholarships for, especially for the next academic year. So it's something just to do consistently, but typically around this time in the fall is really a good time to start applying. Yeah, get your free money, apply for scholarships for the next academic year. And even for this current year, but typically there's just a really good bunch of scholarship opportunities around this time of year. So with that, I think I want to thank you, and we have time for questions. If anybody has any questions about what was discussed or have a question about something that wasn't touched upon, please feel free to either put it in the chat or go off mute, and we'd be happy to address it directly.
I have a question. Can you submit more than one cost of adjustment request form, or like if you get denied, can you submit it again?
Yes, you can submit more than one cost of attendance adjustment. And if you get denied, or let's say it was denied because there wasn't clear documentation or whatnot, you can always fill out a new one and submit another one. You know, expenses come up all throughout the year. So we do have the ability, or students have the ability to submit more than one cost of attendance adjustment, just so we can take into consideration some of those expenses as they come up throughout the year.
Thank you.
I also have a question about specifically about work study. So say you were to start work study like right now in the term, would that work study still be paid for the semester, or would that be paid forward for the spring semester?
Yeah, that's a great question. So work study is an award where you just are given an amount that you can earn, right? So typically our work study awards are around $4,000. And so it's really, you can earn up to $4,000. Now you could earn that in the fall semester all at once, or you can earn it throughout fall and spring, or you can earn it up to spring or in spring semester only. So in that, it's somewhat atypical because you utilize the award as you earn it. So it really just depends on when you get your work study job and you know, how many hours you work and how it fits in with your schedule.
Thank you.
Nicole, can you clarify or maybe just remind folks, are there any deadlines students need to be mindful of around taking out loans for fall for this semester? I know some students, maybe that's their main option right now, and they're trying to, assess that with other things. Like, is there anything as we're entering this last week of classes that they should be mindful of?
Yeah, and Joey and Anthony, I'm going to look at you all. So for students, if you're graduating at the end of fall, there are specific deadlines for loan acceptance. We do need those loans to what we call originate before the last day of the semester. And so Joey or Anthony, I don't know on the top of my head, the fall loan acceptance deadline, it's usually a week or so before the priority deadline to accept your loan is usually a week before the last day of the term.
I think we have November 30th posted on our website, but I know we can still do like up until like the next week for originating still yet.
Yeah, I would say if you're going to be here for the academic year, and you didn't accept your loans, let's say, so if you're enrolled in fall and you signed up for classes in spring and you didn't accept your loans before the end of the fall semester, you can still accept those fall loans in the spring semester. So those loans, as long as you're enrolled in spring, you can accept your loans and the entire loan for fall and spring within the spring semester. It's just for if you're graduating at the end of fall, just those loans would need to have again be accepted before the end of the semester. But if you're continuing on, you're here for the entire academic year. Let's say you went through fall, you didn't accept loans, it's spring semester, you realize that, okay, maybe I should accept some of my loans. You don't have to accept all that you've been offered, but you accept some of them. You would get a fall disbursement retroactively.
I have another question to kind of follow up on what you're talking about right now. So how does the loan, like debt loan relief program, how does that interact with this? Like, does that apply to us? I just like was a little confused by that because I'm a current student and I don't know if that is only for people who graduated or I'm not too informed on that.
Yeah, so I'll go ahead and start, and then Joey and Anthony, please jump in. So the current loan, the current debt relief that's going on just puts on pause payments that students are having to make for the federal loan programs. And so that would be, so if you're no longer in school and your loans are in repayment, the payments on those loans have been put on pause. Now there's additional relief that's churning through the system right now. There's been the Biden-Harris loan debt relief plan, which would forgive up to $20,000 in student loan debt. I do believe that if you were a student borrower if you borrowed student loans up until in June 30th, 2022. So basically before this academic year, loans that were borrowed before this academic year would be included in that additional Biden-Harris loan debt relief program. But that program, again, there's been several appeals to that program. It's currently put on hold. We don't know, it's just working its way through the court system. So we really don't have any information about how that's going to move forward. But my understanding is for students, even if you're a currently enrolled student and you borrowed loans up until in prior academic years, then those loans would be included in the Biden-Harris debt relief program. And Joey and Anthony, do you have any more information about that I didn't? Keep me honest.
No, you're good. The only thing I will say is they did shut the application down. If you got it in the beginning, I think there's like some 16 million borrowers applied in the weeks before all the legislation happened. So I was one, I'm got a notice that at least, hey, we acknowledge it's out there. So that is, at least encouraging in my humble opinion. But if you go on studentaid.gov, you can still see and read all the information. It's all still posted out there if you want to really get into the meat of it all. But the actual application, they did close that out for right now. there's other, I guess the other thing I would say, you can subscribe on there too if you do want to get updates about it. If you do have loans that will be, in that, they'll send out blasts, but there's other things if you really want to just go for it, get all sorts of updates. Department of Ed has it, pretty clearly labeled for you to subscribe for their updates right now as well.
Thank you.
The only thing I was going to add to that is that I think the last public service announcement we got was that, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Nicole, but I think if I'm not mistaken, the loan forgiveness will provide what, 20,000 of debt cancellation for Pell Grant recipients, and then up to 10,000 for non-Pell Grant recipients.
Right. So I just put in the chat just an announcement about it, and then from there you can navigate around. But yes, it's up to $20,000. So for Pell Grant recipients, it's up to $20,000, and there's certain income requirements as well. But then for students who borrow loans but perhaps weren't Pell Grant recipients, then it would cap out at $10,000.
Right.
And of course, it would or the loan balance, whichever is lower.
And that would be like for subsidized and unsubsidized.
Yes, that's right. And in that link that I dropped in the chat, in the yellow block on that website, there's actually the subscription. So you can click on that to subscribe to get updates.
Thank you so much.
Well, with that, I think we are at time for